is, again, what the machine has done is it has looked at all of the health records and said, okay, here are most commonly shared type of records. These 6 types of records are very commonly shared. So I have put in what are the kind of reports that can be shared. So for example, diagnostic reports, there is an FHIR format for a diagnostic report, including covering imaging reports like X-rays, CT scans, MRIs, pathology and lab reports, discharge summaries, OP consultation notes, prescriptions, immunization records, and so on. Now, on the right, you will see a few use cases. What we expect this new ecosystem to do is it, like, for example, if there is a small hospital which does not have an MRI within it and usually refers patients to a lab, a few blocks away. Now the doctor at that small hospital can actually also get access to that full MRI and CT if it is shared via ABDM, right? So also, if you think about what will start getting linked to your health ID first, it is likely to be things that are already digital. So what is already digital in India? Most commonly, you will find diagnostic reports, discharge summaries, maybe to some extent immunization records. And none of this, adding this to your health ID, in our opinion, will significantly change the current processes or the patient time that a doctor is seeing. Where the change will come for a doctor is likely to be when OP consultation notes and prescriptions start getting shared digitally, because that requires a certain amount of change management on the healthcare provider, right? So we are also looking at, should the doctor be the only person digitizing? Say, for example, can medicines be digitized at the point of dispensation rather than at the point of prescription, so that it becomes part of your health record? So this is at least where we are. You can find, and I'm sure Kumar would have already pointed you out to the place where all of these formats are available. It's on a site called nrces.in. So that's the National Resource Center for eHealth Standards /NDHM. And that's where we have published what we call as the India profile for FHIR profile for these specific type of records. Now, we talked about a health ID as the entity to which health record related information gets linked. So let's understand a bit about what's a health ID. So fundamentally, a health ID is kind of think of it like an address that you decide to get if you want your health records digitally. So you don't need to get a health ID if you don't want to have digital records. But if you want to get a digital records, we say, go get yourself a health ID. There's also some naming change that we are doing. There is going to be a new name that you will see significantly in all of our communication, which is called a PHR address. So which is like, mine is, for example, Kiran MA at NDHM. So you will see that more and more that we will use the word PHR address, and you can always get this by just providing your name, date of birth. You can get a PHR address by creating a name, date of birth, gender, and a mobile number. So let's assume Pramod decides that he wants to collect his health records digitally. And the step one that Dr. Pramod has to do is to go create his own PHR address. Now, how would that happen? Either he will essentially go to a site which is healthid.ndhm.gov.in. It's now called abdm.gov.in. Or he can download any compatible PHR app. Right now, we are showing one PHR app here called the NDHM PHR app in this diagram. But right now, the ecosystem, there are many people building PHR apps, including Arogya Setu is becoming a PHR app. Paytm is building a PHR app. Eka.care, Briefcase, Doc Prime. There are many, many people who are building PHR apps. So it's similar to the ecosystem of UPI apps. You will, as a consumer, choose any one app. And this app, when you basically start this app will help you get your health ID and PHR address. The other option, of course, we have is what's called an assisted registration. So a health facility can get you your health ID. And we think this may be used by many people who are either elderly or illiterate or those who don't even have a mobile phone. So at the hospital, they can create a separate desk or a kiosk, and they can help you get your health ID. So that's number one. Now, your health ID itself, we said that the whole design is supposed to be user-centric. So in a user-centric design, what we are saying is, if you want to collect your health records, you will essentially start sharing your PHR address when you go for treatments at various health facilities. So there are many ways we have created by which how you can share your PHR address. You can essentially go to a health facility, and like you do today with UPI apps, when you go to the hospital, you will find one little QR code that will be probably pasted at the hospital or the clinic's reception counter. You will simply pull out the PHR app that you have downloaded, and that has a scan function. You just scan that QR code, instantly your PHR address and your profile, your name, date of birth, gender, mobile number, all of that is passed on to that software which is being used by that clinic or hospital, and you are instantly registered. The other thing you can do is you can simply show your card, or you can show the QR code that you have on your phone to the person. They can scan it, or you can also share it verbally. You can say, hey, my PHR address is Kiran MA at ABDM, and I'll get an OTP. And if I share that OTP, I can actually get all of my details and register it. So that is how essentially what we think will happen is that PHR addresses will result in error-free capture of patient information by hospitals, and it will also reduce the waiting time at the counters of the hospitals. Now let's understand a bit about how did this actually end up creating longitudinal health records. Now we all know that any hospital, diagnostic center or clinic is typically creating a digital health record using some piece of software. It's typically what we call a HMIS software or LMS software. So when we see a PDF from a lab, it got created on some kind of a software. Now, what we expect is that this software that is used at a health facility will go through a modification to become part of what we call as ABDM compliant. So if it wants to participate in this process of Ayushman Bharat digital mission, it needs to make a change where it integrates its software with various APIs that have been provided by ABDM. So let's look at the changes that have to be done. Number one, we are expecting that software will be changed so that it can collect that PHR address from the patient if the patient decides to share that PHR address. That's number one. Number two, we expect that whatever health record, digital health record it is creating, it will hold it for the long term. Now we have released very recently for consultation a paper called the Health Data Retention Policy, which says how long should that software hold those records. So for example, let us say you went and you got a blood test done at some small lab opposite your house today. You get a printout, you go away, but you don't know for how long that lab is retaining a digital copy of that record. So under ABDM, if that lab decides to participate in ABDM, they will have to adhere to the data retention policy. And that policy will say, okay, how long now do you have to keep that digital copy of that health record? That's the second change that is coming. The third thing that the facility has to do, and it's not the facility, but the software that is at the facility has to do now, is it has to put a link. So because you shared your PHR address at the hospital, the facility will now put a link saying, hey, I have some health records for this PHR address. And it does this by putting the link with what we call as the HIECM, the Health Information Exchange and Consent Manager. So if you were to go and look at a PHR address in the Health Information Exchange and Consent Manager, let's say we were looking at Dr. Pramod's PHR address at the HIECM, you would see a bunch of links from various health facilities where he has visited and shared his PHR address, essentially like that. So in the PHR address, we call these constructs that are added as care contexts. So each link is called a care context, and our current recommendation is that one care context be added for each OPD event, and as one care context be added for each IPD event. So for example, you could get admitted in a hospital stay for 5 days. There could be a whole bunch of tests and reports that are run for you, but there would still be just one link there saying, hey, I am holding a care context for an IPD event at the hospital. And below that care context, there could be a whole bunch of health records that are linked. Now, the HIECM or the entity in this architecture never sees the health record. So the HMIS system is simply putting a link. The HMIS system does not share the health record ever with the HIECM. And this is very important to understand in the architecture, because the architecture we use is called a federated architecture, where various software at various health facilities continue to hold the copy of the digital records for the long term, and a copy of that, only the links of that is put into the PHR address, and that links are managed and maintained by the HIECM in this architecture. So I will stop here at this point, and I will answer any questions before we get into. So we have kind of got to the point where we are saying we understand how, where the records are held, who's putting the links, and what's in a link. Any questions so far?
Actually, yes, Kiran. Let's just take a step back. Now, PHR address Sandeep 321 at NDHM.
Yeah.
Each resident will only have one PHR address, or is it possible for multiple?
They can have more than one if they want to. So think of it like a bank account. You can have more than one bank account, and think of a link that is added like money. So because it's a user controlled ecosystem, you could have two PHR addresses. In hospital 1, you could have shared one. In hospital 2, you could have shared 2. But you will have the power to bring all the links across PHR addresses into one PHR address. It's like moving all your money from one bank account to another bank account. Then you can decide to shut down a bank account.
So therefore, you're saying the residents have the power of merging their records if they have it across different. And one more thing, therefore, now the reference link, which is the most important part of what we were trying to get at. The health facility software links the health record with the health information exchange and consent manager holding the PHR address. To our understanding, the HIE and the consent manager can be, in a given state, can be multiple players, right? It depends on who I actually engage with.
Yeah. So the way it works is like this. In this diagram only shows you one. And I have another diagram. Let me see if I can pull that up and open that architecture so that, give me a second, guys. Yeah.
Kumar, you're recording this, right? Yeah, it's going on. Okay.
Yeah. So basically the final architecture that we are moving to will look like this. So right now, what has been released by ABDM is the Health ID system and the NDHM Health Information Exchange and Consent Manager, right? Which at this point, until now was being called at NDHM, it's been renamed to now at ABDM.
Right.
Okay. But the idea is to have multiple health information exchange and consent managers in the market.
Okay.
And they can issue PHR addresses which look like at ABC or at XYZ. So in the UPI world, you would have seen something like at OKSBI or at OKHDFC or at ICICI. I don't know if you have noticed UPI IDs having something, we call it a VPA there with an at symbol.
Right.
Right. So that means Pramod can have Pramod at ABDM, Pramod at ABC.
Gotcha.
Okay. And when you go to a hospital, let us say you were to share Pramod at ABC. Right? In such a case, then in this diagram, the health facility says, oh, the PHR address I have is Pramod at ABC. So this link I have to put will be with the HIECM called at ABC, not with at NDHM. I hope that concept is clear.
Right. And therefore, whatever links are under ABC is what will be available to that given health information user, correct?
Correct. So
if I wanted to send a
from
longitudinal, I'll have to probably give 3-4 of my different user addresses.
Either that or you merge everything. See,
Or
we are encouraging. So we are saying user choice is important because there may be scenarios where we have visualized scenarios like where, for example, people may want to keep certain mental health records or their sexual health data outside of their PHR address, right? But we are saying if they want, they can also merge it. There is nothing stopping them from taking 2 PHR addresses and merging all of the links into one longitudinal record. That's number one. Number two is the user control is the key in the thinking overall of how we are doing this. Okay, I think I have a couple of people who have raised their hands. I can't see the screen. If somebody else can please direct who the next person.
Yeah, Mr. Karunakar, would you like to go ahead? Then there's Anurag after that, and then there's Dhruv.
Yeah, Kiran, I have a question regarding the privacy aspect. So somewhere I read there was a critique about the patient the ABDM, the record itself. So if we were to have the critique was that like initially the health record leaks a certain amount of info like date of birth and all of that. That bare set of minimum set of information. So I wasn't sure. I was thinking that like this is like a hospital generally it would be have to be a participant in the ABDM, and there will be some kind of a checks and balances for this. Can you explain that around that, like if you could do that briefly?
I am not clear about what this one is. I have kind of broadly explained the architecture to you. So I'll tell you the safeguards that we are putting so that you are aware, right? So first and foremost, we are saying one of the big areas of leaks that can happen is that somebody can hack into that HMIS, LMIS software, right? So if that happens, all of the health records at that particular health facility will get leaked, and that will include all kind of personal information, health information, and blah, blah. But it is likely that for a single individual, his whole longitudinal record did not get leaked. Some of his records got leaked. Correct? So one of the things that is a necessity for participation in ABDM is essentially a security assessment. So today the industry, in the healthcare industry today, people deploy HMIS and LMIS systems left, right, and center, and there is generally not much attention paid on the security side. So by going through this ABDM compliance, one of the basic steps that does happen is a security certification is mandatory as part of integrating with the ABDM ecosystem. So that's one layer of security that we have managed to introduce into your protection of your health records. The second thing is, by design, the HIECM is designed to be data blind. So today, for example, the HIECM is being run by the government. In this case, the National Health Authority is running an HIECM. But the HIECM actually cannot see, that does not have access to any of your health data. It only at best knows your PII data. So it does definitely know that there is somebody called Dr. Pramod, this is his name, age, gender. And it knows what kind of, where you might have gone. From that, yes, some inference can be drawn that, hey, yeah, this person has gone to NIMHANS, which is a mental health institution. All of those inferences can still be drawn from some of the links that are there, but very minimal information is there. Third, we are coming up with an ecosystem where all HIECMs will be regulated entities. So there will be certain oversight, because the most important role of the HIECM in the architecture is to manage your consents. And there will be certain oversights, especially with the Data Protection Authority coming in, as well as with the fact that the National Health Authority will be overlooking that from the perspective of protecting the citizen and the citizen's rights or the resident's rights. I hope that helps you answer that question to some extent.
Yes. So I think I just recollected that it the question was slightly different. Like it was about National Health ID. So from there, the card being imported into DigiLocker, and then there is some kind of a thing that then I vaguely recollect that it's not exactly the question that I wanted to ask.
Sure.
Yeah. So more of one, I think the interesting point. Sorry. I think one significant point you said, the rights model is more important, right? Where the right of the user is protected.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Anurag.
Yeah. Hi, Kiran. My question is around PHR.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the benefits of PHR and how the PHR gets created. I wanted to understand if a person walks into a hospital and does not have a PHR, then how does the HIMS at the hospital handle it?
Very good.
Then,
I didn't put a slide on it, but that's a very good question. So what I have described to you just now, where I said that the HMIS puts the link on the HIECM, is what in our architecture we call as HIP initiated linking. So if you have read that our other documentation, you'll understand this is where a hospital has the PHR address and therefore is able to add the link. But what will in reality, what will happen in the beginning? Let us say when the ecosystem is starting. So today, when you are going to the hospital, today you don't know anything about what's a PHR address. You don't even have a PHR app. You're not necessarily voluntarily giving a PHR address to a hospital, but you are providing your name, date of birth, gender, and mobile number to a hospital. Is that right?
yes.
So what we are doing is, when a hospital decides to participate in ABDM and it creates a new registration for a patient with just a mobile number, name, age, and gender, mobile number, date of birth, and gender, we ask that HMIS system to do a notification to the user saying that, look, you can now access your records through any compatible PHR app. So what actually happens is the user gets a deep link. So it's a contextual thing. So you've gone to a lab, you're expecting a blood report. You will now get a message which says, hey, do you know that the National ABDM program allows you to build a longitudinal record? Just click on this link. And when you click on the link, it will show you all the compatible PHR apps. If you already have one of these compatible PHR apps installed on your phone, it will open that on the phone. So for example, like I said, Arogya Setu, which has about 15 crore downloads, is also going to become a PHR app. So when you launches the PHR app, that PHR app will now help you create your first PHR address. Now, when it's creating your PHR address, it asks you for the same information. What is your name, date of birth, gender, mobile number, right? And second, it knows that there was a deep link that came from this HIP. So our architecture has a flow that we call as a discovery flow. A discovery flow is what we call as user initiated linking. So we understood what a hospital initiated or a facility initiated, we call it a HIP initiated linking. HIP means health information provider initiated linking. The other direction in which a link can be put is by the user themselves. What the user can do is, so just to complete that flow I was describing, now once you have created that PHR address, your PHR app will make a request back to the HMIS and asks the question to the HMIS, hey, do you have any health records for this gentleman with this mobile number, name, date of birth, and gender? And when you do a match, you will find that, yes, I do have a record for this gentleman. So it will send a response back saying, yes, I'm holding a record. And then our system allows the user to make the decision saying, I want to link these records into me, which means if you download our PHR app, you can open that app, you can go and search for a facility you visited even 1 year ago. Like let's say you went to an Apollo hospital a year ago. You can go and say, hey, I went to this facility a year ago. Can I get those records? And when you will send to that facility your mobile number, name, date of birth, gender, and additionally, you can even give if you have a printout from that 1 year ago, you can even give the hospital's ID that was printed on that document. If there is a match, and if they're still holding those records, they will say, yes, I have your records, and you can still add them to your longitudinal records. So we have a way by which you can get historical records and we have a way by which you can get forward going records. I hope I have answered that question.
Yes, thanks, Kiran. One more thing that I wanted to ask, understand basically, not ask, is I see that there is an effort that has been made to separate the HIP from the capability of building the PHR address. So can you also help me understand why?
Say that again. I lost your query. I didn't understand your query.
So the HIP, like in the process that you've explained, the HIP essentially cannot create a PHR address for the patient at the point of contact.
It can during the registration. I mean, we are like I said in the, if you look at this slide, we are not saying it should not create. If you look at this slide that I used, we are saying you can have assisted registration at the facility. There is nothing stopping that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, then I guess we have the next Mr. Dhruv.
Yeah, I have two questions basically. First one is, can we update care context data once we link
Who's we?
with the...
Who's we? Are you
Sorry.
the health facility?
Sorry?
Who's we in this context of your question?
As an HIU.
As a HIP?
HIP,
Yes.
sorry, HIP.
Yes. HIPs can update care context. They can basically say there is more records or there is a new version of the record, whatever they want.
So shall we have to maintain that versioning?
Yes, the FHIR document structure that we have released does support versioning. Whether it will be implemented that way is still yet to be seen in the market, but that is the idea.
Okay. And
So
another.
Yeah, can you please expand on that? So you mean it's the hospital or the care facility that has to give the context, correct?
Yeah. So let us say you went to a lab. Let's say the lab issued you a report once. When it issues the report, it created a care context against your PHR address.
Okay.
Now
it's a mandatory step.
Decides to reissue that report for whatever reason.
Is that a mandatory step?
What?
Giving a care context?
If it is participating in ABDM, yes.
Okay.
It is mandatory.
Please carry on. Dhruv, please carry on.
Okay. Yeah. Now let us say the lab decides to reissue that lab report for whatever reason. So typically we would expect that the two documents, because the older document is already issued, that the new document would be issued with an updated version number.
So once HIU will request for any care data against that care context, so shall we have to push only latest one, correct?
Yeah, only the latest one, yes.
So if we will not maintaining the versioning, will it impact anywhere?
It may impact from the perspective that other HIUs could have got a copy of the older record.
Okay.
And how do they handle it is the question then.
Okay, understood. And the second one is the security related. What are the touch points should be there? Because on the documentation, I was not able to find any touch points. And the whether we have to take care of the HMI as well as the hosted API, both should be under the security test?
Basically, we say that the APIs that you're exposing are the ones that will usually be subjected to the VASA test. But usually they will also try to penetrate the main screens of the EMR or the HMI. So overall, ideally the whole, because you don't know when somebody is breaking in, they will get hold of any page URL that they can get access to. And then they'll try to see if they can do an SQL injection or somewhere else to get into your system, right? Okay. So ideally, the whole application should be security tested.
Okay, but none of the vendor is able to understand what kind of touch point should be there. So
when you say touch
I have
point,
contacted.
What do you mean?
Means WhatsApp that you are told that.
Yes.
So what kind of test should be taken care, and what is the exact expectation of the vendor, means the NDHM? So the listed 50 of vendors are there who are taking care of the security.
Huh.
Yeah. So I have contacted almost 20 or 25. None of them is able to understand what is the exit requirement from the NDHM.
No, your application should be, and I don't know how big your application is, but your application just needs to go through a full OWASP. That's all it is.
Okay. Okay. Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
And if you submit that certificate to ABDM, then they will proceed to the production exit.
Okay. Understood. Understood. Yeah.
Yeah, Praveen.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Praveen, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. I would like to understand, as a PHR user, can I separate out certain health records? Like I visited a mental facility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There some records have been updated against my PHR.
Yes.
Then I went to a cardiology hospital.
Yes.
Where I don't want to share this kind of information
Correct.
with them.
Correct.
Particular consent for that. I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I'll come to that in a second. So we'll hold on to that question, Praveen.
Sure.
We can, because we haven't discussed how do you get hold of these health records yet. All we have talked about so far is how are these longitudinal health records created, right? We haven't looked at the sharing scenario yet. So I will cover that in the sharing scenario.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Venkatesh?
Yeah, so I have a question, like in the whole like ABDM, what we are seeing, the whole workflow, your hospitals or any HIP or any repository is the one holding the data.
Correct. So the repository provider, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the repository provider is treated as a separate entity than the health facility. So for example, there is a company called Live Health. I think they renamed themselves to Crelio Health, which offers a hosted LIMS software to almost 4,000 labs. Okay. Right? So in our architecture, those labs are the health facilities. Live Health is basically the health repository provider because he is holding those health records on behalf of those 4,000 labs.
Okay. Yeah, so the repository provider should be tagged then to an HIP and an HIU, right?
Not a HIU, HIP.
HIP, sorry, yeah, only for a HIP.
Yes.
And so your Google Fit or let's say your Apple Health can be tagged as HIUs as well, right?
No.
Because they
No. Very, very interesting question there. So we'll cover that in a minute in your next this one. So user generated data is a separate class of data. So let us say at my home, I do a BP test or a blood test, or I do an Apple Fitbit data and I say I want to add that to my PHR. That is treated very differently because those are not health facilities. You are not a health facility because the whole ecosystem is controlled, right? So, and let's cover that from an architecture perspective before we come back, because this is now that we have got to this point. I think this is good to share and I'll come back to the thing, right? So we have now understood that a lab or a hospital is the health information provider. The software that he uses, which holds the health record, and that is the software that needs to become ABDM compliant, that we call as a health repository provider. And whenever any data is shared, it is shared using a NDHM FHIR profile, right? So this much you have understood. Now you ask this question, can anybody be part of this ecosystem? So if you ask the question, can anybody link, can any EMR or LMIS app link a data against my health ID? The answer is no. For you to be able to link against a health ID or a PHR address, number one, you need to first make sure that you are a certified HRP in ABDM. So you must go get your software certified, pass the security test, show that you have implemented all the APIs correctly. Only then can you get production access and you are allowed to link. Second, can you represent any hospital, diagnostic center or clinic with that EMR? The answer is yes, but that hospital, diagnostic center or clinic must first register itself in the health facility registry. Okay. So then we know that, okay, you are a valid health facility, which is now using this particular ABDM compliant health repository software to participate in ABDM.
Yeah. Okay.
Got that construct?
Yeah. But then there's this doubt, like, if you're admitted in the hospital, if let's say you are an outpatient and you were admitted for, let's say, 24-hour glucose test, or you have a G6 or a Dexcom device that maintains your glucose level, that will be directly gone through the HIMSS system to your repository, and that data will be stored when you are outpatient, right? Because that
So
whole thing is in
it
your
depends on the
ecosystem.
direction the data is coming from. If the Holster device is going back to the hospital and the hospital is adding the data, then they have every right to add the data to your medical record.
Correct. If you're admitted in the hospital and you're giving consent, then they will be able to add. But then if you're at home and you're doing it as an exercise, like if some doctor
and then you're doing it, that is where it comes back to the same question of the user generated data. Okay. So now let us just take a minute to understand. Now that, let's say we spend a minute, now that there is Pramod has a PHR address. Pramod has gone around to 3-4 facilities and linked his PHR address. And so he has a bunch of care contexts that are linked to his PHR address. Now, how does anybody get access to Pramod's health data? That's the key question, right? So the entities that get access to Pramod's data, so let's say it's another hospital. Now Pramod has gone to a 4th facility and that facility wants access to Pramod's data. How do they do it? What the facility starts by doing it is it'll ask Pramod, hey, do you have a, so typically at the registration time, if Pramod shares his PHR address, they know that you have a PHR address. So immediately they can check whether there is any other health records linked to that PHR address. So they'll get a yes, no, they won't get actually the details. So if there is some linked thing, they will say, okay, let me send a consent request to Pramod, asking him to give me access to my facility, access to his health records. Okay. So this is the first step. So what is happening here is that this software, which is called a HIU software on the right side, is making a consent request to the Health Information Exchange and Consent Manager saying, I would like access to Pramod at ABDM's health records. Now the Health Information Exchange and Consent Manager will route that consent request to whatever PHR app Pramod is using. So Pramod will get a pop-up on his phone which says, hey, this health facility wants access to your health records. Do you want to approve? Now, if you look at a consent request consists of 3 things or 4 things actually. It consists of a purpose. Why do you want access to Pramod's records? And that's a mandatory field. You must provide the purpose. The second thing it says is, what records do you want to get access to? So
the date, there could be a date.
Like you could have a date range. You could say, I want access to the last 1 year's records. And you can also say what type of records. I want all prescriptions, or I want only the discharge summaries, whatever you want access to. And lastly, how long will you keep these records for? So when you create the consent request, you're filling out these 4 things. Why do you want the data? What is the time range you want the data for? What is the type of data you want? How long will you hold the data? Okay. When Pramod gets that consent request, Pramod can look at it and he can now actually decide which data to share. So somebody asked, Naveen asked the question, can I not share my mental health data? The answer is yes. So when Pramod responds, Pramod can decide on his PHR app, what is he providing access to? He can also change what is the date for by which, how long they can keep it, and so on. He can change anything.
PHR app, I got that option to provide the consent. Like if I can able to see who is actually asking what they're asking for and the date as well.
Correct. And you can decide of the records that I have, what do I want to share and how long can you keep it? Now, the beauty of the architecture is you can say yes now, and in a 1 hour, you can change your mind and you can actually revoke your consent that you have granted. So consents now become a powerful tool through which you can control your data. Okay. So once you sign that consent request and you give it back to the HIE gives the signed consent request back to the facility. And now the facility says, okay, I have got Pramod's consent. Now let me ask for the data. So the HIE or the HIU now makes a request to the HIECM saying, here is Pramod's signed consent. Give me all the data that fits this. And the HIECM will talk to all of the various HIPs or HRPs, actually, the health repository providers who are holding Pramod's data, and say, okay, Pramod has given his agreement, send a copy of this data to this HIU. Now, when the data moves, and I don't have it in this diagram, when the data moves, the data does not go through the health information exchange and consent manager. It directly goes from the health repository provider to the health information user outside of the building blocks. It goes encrypted and it moves directly. So the health information exchange and consent manager knows that a consent was granted, the data moved to this endpoint, but it does not actually know what is the data. But the health information user knows. So a software at a hospital can also be a health information user. So that means your EMR or HMIS software, which has now got a copy of all the medical records, can organize it and make it available to the doctor by the time Pramod walks in to meet the doctor.
Okay.
Got it? So that's the architecture, guys. Now I've finished my explanation of how these things work. We only have to talk about the locker bit. So let's finish that and then we can get into the questions again. Now we have a concept. Remember who is holding your health records? We said that the health repository provider is holding your health records. How long will you hold the health records? As per the health data retention policy. What does the health data retention policy say? 10 years. So assuming somebody is participating in ABDM, it is likely that your health record will be held for at least 10 years, but that's not your lifetime. That's number one. Second, there is a problem. Full EMR scans can be, full MRI scans can be 200, 300 MB, maybe more. Many of these guys don't want to keep that for 10 years. So what our policy says is that, hey, users can not only have a PHR address, but they can also create their own personal storage that is called as a health locker. So health locker is nothing but a storage in the cloud that belongs to the user. And the user can say that whenever a new health record is created, take a copy of it, put it in my locker. So the architecture allows for a copy to automatically move. So the moment a care context is created, the locker will automatically go and pull a copy. Now, the locker, because it is my personal storage, is also the place where I can add any user-generated data. So this is where my Fitbit data can go. This is where my home records and other information can go. And on the PHR care context, it will show up separately that this is not added by a facility. This was added by the user themselves into their locker. That's number one. So that's the construct of a locker. Second, the locker also, when you're sharing, we said that, you have got a consent from the user. Pramod has given a consent from the user to get to access his records. There are two ways in which a HIU can get hold of those records. One, it can get it from the network, which means the original repositories that are holding the record. Or two, it can get it from the locker, which is holding a copy. I hope the construct is clear. So happy to take any questions now.
So therefore, a couple of questions. One is under the definition of health fiduciary, it would be the HIP and as well as the health repository provider and the HIU, because the HIU is receiving records also, correct?
It will not include the HRP. So HRP,
will not include the HRP.
No. So the legal entities. So let us say now, we'll go back to the Live Health example. Live Health is provisioning a cloud hosted software, which is being used by a lab called Kiran Labs. Now, the record that was created by Kiran Labs. And as far as the law is concerned, Kiran Labs is the data fiduciary. Now, the fact that Kiran Labs is using Live Health software is Kiran Labs' problem. So under the law, Kiran, the the health repository provider plays the role of what is called a data processor. So in the PDP bill, you will see that there are entities where the data fiduciary can outsource his responsibilities to intermediaries to do the job. Okay, but yes, you're right. The HIU, once it obtains your health record with consent, becomes a data fiduciary now. And it also is restricted to use use your data only for the purpose for which it has obtained the consent.
Okay, so basically, otherwise the rules of the health fiduciary and the responsibilities do lies. I mean, the health repository provider has to abide by them. Correct, to my understanding.
Yeah. In some sense, the health repository provider helps the health information provider to be compliant to the laws.
Okay. And now another point is in the NDHM health locker, again, this is need not be NDHM.
No, it's not an NDHM health locker. Yeah, there will be multiple health lockers.
Okay, multiple health lockers, and in a given state also there can be multiple health lockers. Correct.
See, health lockers are not state entities or state actors. Health lockers are services that are provided by any interested party to consumers.
Okay.
There is no, see, we do not have an EHR construct. There is no state or national or government infrastructure which is holding all health records.
Gotcha. So it can be private players, but with a nationwide footprint also.
Yeah. We don't care. We don't care, whether there is no state allocation or nothing like that. It is about how many consumers can you acquire for your locker service.
And the second thing is that the lockers will actually hold the physical record, not just the indexes.
Yes.
Now, was there a reason as to why we felt that needed to be done?
Because, like I said,
10 years. 10 years. Now, regarding that, Kiran.
And also for user-generated data. These are the two scenarios.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, one thing I want to ask you, I think in the paper world, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure of this. OP records, outpatient records are supposed to be maintained by hospital for 7 years. But
no. It's inpatient. Outpatient, there is no regulation today.
Is it? Okay. Inpatient is only 7 years or is
inpatient
it 20
is,
years?
Yeah, no, it's 7 years. 7 is like, unfortunately, there are too many laws which overlap on that. But the longest law that comes to is 7 years. There is a 3, there is a 5, there is a 7.
Okay. So anyway, but the 10 years covers all the possible.
But it also covers outpatient in our case.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead. There are a lot of raised hands. Sunil, please go ahead. Mr. Sunil, you can unmute yourself and please.
Yeah, sorry. So thanks for the presentation, Kiran. It's very nice. So if I receive a record from another healthcare provider as a healthcare provider, do I also get the provenance of the data along with the record?
Yeah, you do. But yeah, a lot will depend on how it's implemented, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Dhruv, we can unmute yourself and please ask.
Kiran, that you have told that we may have the lots of data available in a few years down the line. So is it possible or any another way to use this data for the data analytics?
Yeah. As a HIU, you can use anything, you can do anything on the data. There's not a problem. The challenge in the Indian ecosystem right now is that almost every integrator who has currently become a HRP is not doing what we call as structured FHIR. So, let's take a lab report, for example. A lab report, every test line item in a lab report has to be coded with LOINC, right? So they don't even understand LOINC. So in fact, Pramod is running, and Dr. Pramod here is running an initiative where we are trying to find a way by which we can accelerate the process and help Indian labs quickly adopt some of these standards so that they can start producing structured reports. So what they're doing today, they're basically attaching their existing PDF, but wrapped in an FHIR, XML or a JSON.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the good part is at least some data is being shared and there is a national standard. The bad part for the HIU is the HIU can only display the PDF as is, and only some players who have the ability to go into the PDF, extract some information. And I've seen at least 3-4 players in the market who are now analyzing these PDFs and extracting information to provide a better kind of an analytical report to the doctor. So think of it like this: in phase 1 of ABDM, a doctor will get pretty much a digital version of a physical file, where he can still see the records, but he still has to flip through them to make any sense of it. In the later half, now what we are doing is we are pushing these same integrators saying, hey, we are only going to give you a 1-year certification on ABDM. In the next 1 year, you please start generating structured data.
Okay. As a HIP, there will be required to produce structured data.
Correct. As a HRP more than a HIP, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So down the line, will it be possible to get so many data of the other, different patients, and we can analyze those data?
Different patients, you see, if you can collect consents, you can get the data. Otherwise, no.
Okay, understood.
Because this architecture I have explained to you is for what we call as personal health information flows, because it is, we are not flowing anonymized or aggregated data here. Okay. We are flowing personal health data. So personal health data will only flow, it will come with all PII information, but it will only flow with consent.
Okay, understood.
There is a second part to our architecture, which is about making aggregated data sets or anonymized data sets available for other purposes, right? That is not something I have covered in today's discussion.
Okay. Done. Thank you.
Yeah, Pradeep. Arun, sorry.
Hi, a very good evening, sir. Pradeep this side.
Yeah, Pradeep.
Yes, sir. So I'm a DIPP certified startup, and currently I'm, by the way, I'm a certified medical coder, and from past 9 years, I'm working in US health industry. So, sir, I'm going to make the same kind of electronic health record, or that to claim process, electronic claim process, that I want to create such kind of application. So in the market discovery phase, while talking to all the stakeholders, so this is very difficult to make them understood that once you will connect with ABDM and your data will be once it will be go through interoperability, and once the insurance penetration will be came into the existence, so it will be very beneficial for that patient as well as for the hospital. But sir, on the ground basis reality, while going to the hospital to make them understood that National Digital Health Mission is a program where you can get a maximum opportunity, but they are not at all in the mood of to listen that such kind of things is going to be happen, and they are not convinced at all. So sir, tell me, what is the future of health claim platform for upcoming 1 to 2
health claim platform? Actually, okay, it's a different discussion, Pradeep, and maybe we can connect offline, but I will request you to connect with the SWAST NGO, which is actually working very hard on the specifications and also running a pilot on the health claims platform. Are you aware about it's called SWAST app? It's called swast.app, I think is the site. You can reach out to Abhishek or Ajay there. If you need, please, my email ID is Kiran at, you can use Kiran at nha.gov.in. You can write to me, I'll connect you with them.
Yes.
But definitely India is proceeding on a very, very fast pace towards a common set of standards and common set of rails for health claims. And there is a very strong demand for this from the hospitals. I don't know what kind of hospitals you're talking to, but if you look at a large corporate hospital, like let's say if you go to a Manipal or you go to a Medanta, 80 to 90% of their revenue will be through insurance.
Exactly, sir.
And
Exactly.
for them, you know, this claims platform and the ability to track a claim from submission till payment is super critical. Okay, so they are all very excited and we are dealing with all of them. And we believe that adoption of what we call as the health claims exchange, HCX, is going to be very, very strong. So it is about most of the pilots are expected to happen before March of 2022. So there is a lot of active coding, development, design going on in this space. So if it's on interest to you, I will recommend you please contact the Swasth group.
Yeah, sir. Actually, sir, I'm very aware that all that one city, they are, that corporate hospital are doing. But at the same time, the hospital, which are empaneled with they are also aware. But what about the rest of the hospital or the rest of that health facility? Because, sir, as I'm a certified medical coder, so at the same time, I know how to use the DISCOM, HL7, and ICD, CPT, and all the interoperability where, all the health.
Yeah, but there has to be a business value for that in the Indian context. No, you also know that. So unless we can find that business value, nobody cares about these standards.
Exactly, sir. But sir, unless there will be like that, sir, you know well that in the US healthcare system, UB7 form and CMS 1500 form, claim form is there to for the reimbursement purpose. At the same time, Indian healthcare system, NHA and IRDA is also they are going to create such kind of healthcare platform where two data will be taken from that health entity. One will be CPT and other thing will be ICD. And I'm certified medical coder of that particular field. So I want to, when I'm going to that tier 2 and tier 3 city, because that is a huge market where we can connect with that multiple stakeholder. But sir, this is a very, very, sir, my genuine problem. I have making a very strong such kind of efforts that
Pradeep, we should take this conversation offline. This is not the forum for it. But yes, I understand market adoption is a completely separate problem, folks. And so we can.
Sir, so just I want to know I'm in the right way, sir.
Yeah, डायरेक्शन ठीक है यार, बट कितना टाइम लगेगा किसी को पता नहीं. यूपीआई आप देखेंगे तो 2015 में स्पेक निकला था. 2016 was the first implementation. By the time the market took off, it was 2018. So we are at the 2016 stage of UPI.
Okay.
If you have the patience to wait, then yes, good things will come. And we also need a little bit of luck and some wind behind our tails to coattails to get this going. But yeah, so that's the presentation for today, folks. For those of you, I think most of you know these other constructs, but I just want to leave you with the construct of the ABDM sandbox. So if you are not aware of this, please go check it out. This is where all of these APIs and documentation is available. There is also a dev forum there. There's also a lot of people actively integrating very actively on the sandbox. And we are expecting to see a huge number of integrators go live by Jan 26th, actually, in the coming month. We are trying to focus our energy to light up quite a few of the integrators together around that time frame. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Kiran. Kiran, just one last question before you go. And that is to, we are very, very happy to hear the fact that the ABDM has taken on that stand of saying, okay, PDF is only going to be allowed for a certain amount of time, but then after that, it's got to be fully digital. And I have to say that, even Mr. Abhishek Kumar, when he took an ABDM design and architecture session sometime back, kept saying that there has to be registries and standards. The only thing we notice is, besides you, Kiran, the others in the NDHM or in the NDHM don't seem to be wanting, or ABDM don't want to sort of name these standards. And that sometimes gets us a little concerned because he says it has to be standard compliant, it has to be standard compliant, it should be like, but he will not say fire, he will not say SNOMED, all these things are not being said. But I do hope that that is across the board in ABDM, that they are understanding the requirement for standards and for fire and such, correct?
I mean, see, there is no choice. So let's put it that way. So since I work with them, we will try to make sure that the policies and the documents also clearly, lay this out, because end of the day, Pramod, remember that the bureaucrats who actually manage NHA or ABDM are, not technical by their backgrounds. So
we understand
they may not
that.
necessarily, say fire or lawing, because they also don't understand any of that anymore.
Right, but they are behind it as a concept or as
Right?
And because the reason we say that is this particular community is doing a lot of work. As you know, in the Fire Connectathon also, we are doing a lot of work towards that end.
No, 100%. Yeah, see, because those standards are actually driven not by ABDM, but by NRCES.
Right.
So that NRCES really fully understands the tech, and they are also all tech based. So I don't think so. We are only notifiers. ABDM is only a notifier of a standard. It's not going to be the manager or the creator of any standards.
Right. But they are going to back that whole aspect of
whatever NRCES says, that's the final word, by the way.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Jinju.
Kiran and Dr. Pramod, I just want to know, do you have any spread the news regarding this around the doctor circle? Because when we going to the market, the doctors are not aware in the development in the EHR level, in the NRCS, or they never heard about NRCS also.
No. So Jinju, there is somebody gave me a very brilliant explanation for this particular construct, which I'll reuse. He said, you want to know that you have to buy a BS4 car, but do you want to know what is the BS4 standard really about and how technical it is for the automobile manufacturer? See, it is up to this HMIS, LMIS, developer community to, in the long term, it will become like the word UPI.
Yes.
Okay. You guys, nobody understands what's UPI, but everybody knows, if it is UPI compliant, something will happen, right? So similarly, we are hoping ABDM we have released another word for this called UHI. So if you say my software is ABDM compatible or UHI compatible, that recognition we will try to get into the doctor ecosystem. We will still not try to get to saying, it is LOINC or this or that. They don't care.
Yes. You can just spread the news in the IMA, like Indian Medical Association.
Yeah. I mean, we have done quite a bit, Jinju, but it will take time. These are not. And it's always going to be about show and tell. We have to create strong solutions that we can showcase, which will actually show the value. Just telling them about this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
Yes,
Dr.
we are
Jinju,
struggling. That's why the main problem.
No, Dr. Jinju, believe me, we have a plan, of how to actually spread the word now once we get the whole thing moving and actually working properly, Dr. Jinju. So we have a plan. There's a digital health community, including many of them are in this particular forum, but we have a plan once we get it to show that it's really working well. So that's what we're going to be doing in December. There's something called a Fire Connectathon. In that, we're going to be trying out these different sort of standards and parameters and, exchange of data. Once we prove it, then we will be spreading the word.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Kumar, please go ahead.
Thanks, Kiran, for this session. So every time we listen to you, we uncover or we understand a little bit deeper into the ecosystem. So thanks for that. So, and we have come a long way. That's what I see, right? From the early days of 2020, right? When so standards were like not that much in focus to today, right? Where standards are at least in the mainstay, right? So I think it's only a matter of time when even the standard names and other things will come up. So I get that, and thanks for that. My question is around the topic that Jinju raised. Are there any incentives planned, incentive plans or something like that?
Under discussion, incentives are under discussion, Kumar, but incentives are a little tricky to pull out through the government. So yeah, at this point, no hard incentives are available for adoption.
Sure.
We have recommended a few, but they are still being discussed at the policy level and the budgetary level.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, because the incentive plan, the Obamacare, they forcibly bring down using the incentive, providing the incentive. They make
they had a few $1 billion
yes.
available to give away, sir.
Yeah, $32 billion.
Our government, I'm not sure.
We don't have money like that. Okay, let's be clear. And anyway, I think, folks, we have to let, I mean, Kiran has been very patient and he's really taken a lot of questions. And I think a lot of our doubts have been answered. And especially like the way he has answered our doubts about the logs and the indexing and the reference links and so on. Kiran, we're very grateful to you. Thank you so much. Because
I want to wish all the participants very best for the Connectathon. So looking forward, hoping to see some innovative solutions coming out of this effort. And I'm sure all of this will be really helpful and valuable as this ecosystem evolves. It's a good time to be in digital health, I think.
Great. And thanks a lot for those words, because we really are taking it very seriously in this Connectathon. We are really wanting to break through and make sure it works with all the resources and, make sure that interoperability happens as seamlessly as possible with all the tools and with some assumptions that the, the health professional registries, the health facility registries and all will be in place. Basically, I think I'm pretty confident by the end of December or beginning January, this community will be pretty well versed and have tried out these different data exchanges through FHIR and standard compliance. Again, thank you so much, Kiran. We really are very grateful for you to having spent this time. Kumar, anything else you want to say? Please go ahead. And thanks a lot to Kumar and HL7 for helping us host this session.
So just to reiterate Kiran's email ID, it's kiran@nha.gov.in. So for folks who have not registered the email ID. Thank you. Thanks, Kiran.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
And Kiran has really been a backer of us. So again, thanks a lot for that, supporter and backer of us. All right. Thank you all. And thank you all for attending and being patient.
Thank you.